I've worked in financial services for almost 30 years, and I know you'll be surprised, given my youthful good looks, that I could possibly have worked in the industry for that long. I've been really proud to work for AV Trinity for the last few of those years, and I work with a team of really talented staff, particularly the financial planners, chartered financial planners, one of whom is Louise Morris. As I said, Louise is a chartered financial planner. She's worked with AV Trinity for a staggering 20 years, and I'm really proud that she was appointed to the role of Managing Director this year. So please welcome on stage Louise Morris.
Thank you, Cliff. So Steve has covered quite a broad subject there today, and I'm hopefully just going to go into a little bit more detail on the care fees side of things in terms of the care fees debate. Now, it's been an ongoing hot topic now for since about 2011, when the Deal Not report was first published. And the purpose of that report was really to make recommendations in how to achieve an affordable and sustainable funding system for social care. Now, the original proposals, they've been tweaked a few times, and here we are now 7 years down the line, and we don't really seem to be a lot further forward, and this really is quite a hot potato. Yet, we all still want to live a long and fruitful life, which does come at a cost. As we enter retirement, we start a next phase of a life cycle, in essence. And so in the financial world, we call this decumulation or drawdown of assets. And in general terms, this is broken down into sort of three elements. So when you first enter retirement, your expenditure is likely to increase as you start to tick off your bucket list, go on those long-haul holidays, or just enjoy those weekend hobbies on a more frequent basis. The next part is likely to result in your expenditure to reduce a little. You become less inclined to want to go out and do quite as much, but on a day-to-day basis, you're very much able to live independently and care for yourselves. But then this is generally followed by a varying degree of increased expense, as you're likely to need some form of care. And it's at this time that really consideration is required in terms of the financial pressure and support that's probably required from both family or indeed the social care system. Now, we know the government is under no illusion that there is a problem. And they have good reason to be, and especially when we look at the increasing ageing population, particularly here within the UK. So I'm going to be looking for a little bit of audience participation at this point. Birthday messages have been sent out on behalf of the Queen, who's continuing a tradition that goes back to 1917. And back then, there was 24 centenary telegrams that were sent out for those reaching their 100th birthday. Now, if we jump forward 35 years, anyone give me a figure, hazard a guess as to how many telegrams they think may have been issued? 100. 255. Jumping forward again to 2011, 60 years. Anyone hazard a guess? 3,000. 10,000. Wow. Well, that's not far off the figure. Just below. Good guess. Who's seen my presentation? They've also looked to the future, and they've looked forward to 2046. So, again, hazard a guess. How many telegrams or birthday cards do you think may be issued? 50,000, I heard someone say. Well, you might be astonished to know that you're looking at over 200,000. So that's another 35 years down the line that they think that's the figure that we're looking at. So it truly is a staggering figure. The Office of National Statistics are estimating that in 2046 that those that are aged over 65 will equate to about 25% of the UK population. This compares to a figure of just 14% back in 1976. So again, these are quite staggering figures when we look at them in percentage terms. Now, I am sorry to say, and I know Steve's already sort of highlighted the younger members of the audience today, that the pressure is on you guys and your age group, being what we call the traditional working age. This age group is gradually reducing over the same timescale. So it was 61% and it's now down to about 57% of the total population. So personally, I would like to thank the students in particular that are here today, because you are going to be funding my state pension and a number of us here in the auditorium today. It is the traditional working age group that is funding social care costs, and again, this is something that Steve's already alluded to, and hence, the government do need to crack on and make some decisions, albeit they are going to be tricky decisions, and they're not going to be popular. So we're under no illusion either in that respect. But what we are also seeing, that more people are aged over 90, albeit that they still do make up a very small proportion of the population. But what we see here in this slide, that over the last 30 years, we have seen a gradual increase. There was a little dip there in 2008, which apparently was all to do with the reduction in the number of births in World War I. But nonetheless, we have seen a gradual increase. And then as we come along to 2016, there was over 570,000 people that were aged over 90 years of age. And to break that down just a little bit further, best part of 15,000 were actually over 100 years old, of which there were 1 in 5 men to females. Now, my husband would like to think that that's probably because men work harder. I do beg to differ, seeing as I'm the one that works full-time and he is my house husband. So, but nonetheless. Now, the current average mortality age in the UK is in the mid to late 80s. But interestingly, there is a prediction that somewhere in the world, today, there will be a baby born that is likely to live through to 150 years of age. I find that quite a scary thought, and again, this leads on to refers back to Steve's point about the working for longer, because we are going to be living for longer. But when I sort of put my financial brain into gear, this certainly does obviously sort of justify the need for financial advice and to really sort of tackle this subject matter sooner rather than later. Mortality has improved, particularly in the sort of older age group, mainly because of improved medical treatment, housing and living standards, changes to habits such as smoking. But also, we have seen the mortality age sort of stagnate a little bit, which is partly down to the fact that the NHS and the social care system are under pressure. So, as I say, we are seeing a bit of a stagnation in that figure as well. In terms of those that are actually receiving care today, there's about 7.5% of over 65s that are receiving some form of domiciliary care in their own home. This is becoming a much more popular option in terms of care because it offers more flexibility. The care can be changed based on current and ongoing requirements. For some, the thought of leaving their home brings with it other stresses and strains and worries, which is avoided by having domiciliary care within their own home. It can be a cheaper option, but we mustn't forget that you still have to cover the cost of maintaining and covering the costs of actually running your own home. And it may be in this instance that something like equity release is an option if you're simply not entitled to any other form of social care. There's about 16% of 85-plus-year-olds that are living in care homes, and the average cost, particularly in this neck of the woods, is actually nearer £1,500 a week as opposed to £1,000, which, that is a significant expense. And referring back to my comment about decumulation, this really will have a significant impact on anybody's capital in this stage of the life cycle. So really, it's no wonder it's such a hot topic. Now, this little gem is the Government Actuarial Quinquennial Review of the National Insurance Fund. Try and say that over and over again. It's a long-term review, of which I'm sure Steve is very familiar, and it has to be completed every 5 years. And what it gives us is some insight into what the government are thinking in terms of trying to resolve the financial burden of state benefits. And as I say, we know that they simply aren't sustainable based on the projection of the working population as it is at the moment. Now, in my working life, I've seen my state retirement age increase from 60 to 67, which, although I can't say I'm overly thrilled about, it is a necessary evil, and, you know, I've just got to get on and accept it. What this report indicates, it gives us some, as I say, some insight into what potential options there are, one of which could be, and I think we know it is going to happen at some point, that the state pension will increase for those younger members of the audience into the 70s. Triple lock was mentioned earlier. That is another option that may be tinkered with. It may be known as the double lock, and so currently the triple lock is essentially the annual guaranteed increase to state pensions, being the higher of inflation average earnings or a fixed rate of 2.5%. Again, Steve's talked about the qualifying conditions for the state pension. Whether they tweak with that, whether they adjust that 35 years is yet to be seen. Or even whether there's some other form of means testing benefits that may well come in. But none of these are ideal solutions by a long way. And also, no one solution is actually going to solve the problem of what is such a massive financial gap.